two things I know I can do. Okay, it's shut down most of the executive branch of the government. That automatically stimulates the economy. And the second isn't even through policy, but it's through the way you lead. Revive national pride in this country.
Yep.
Right? Those two things, without asking anybody else for permission, that much I know I can get done. I think the way I'm looking at this as well, this is one of the mistakes that Trump made. It's one of the mistakes that most presidents make. They actually do promise hopes and dreams that they think they're going to fulfill, but it requires Congress. Repeal and replace Obamacare. You might remember that one. Mm-hmm. Well, I think it would have been nice if it happened, but it didn't because it requires. So nothing that I'm promising requires 535 people in Congress to line up and agree with me because I can't make that promise. Mm-hmm. But if you look at the promises I am making, right, that we're going to have a 75% headcount reduction in the federal bureaucracy, that the president can do.
That's fucking huge, dude.
And the president can do that. I don't need Congress to do that. So shut down the Department of Education, shut down the FBI.
So
I can do that.
The president can. So I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So the president has the power to make the government smaller.
Yes.
And that's
the executive branch of government smaller.
And that's
because the president runs the executive
branch. And that's something
branch.
that you're committed to.
I'm deeply committed to. In fact, that's the number one thing I'm going in to do.
Yeah.
If there's two things I know I can do, okay, it's shut down most of the executive branch of the government. That automatically stimulates the economy. And the second isn't even through policy, but it's through the way you lead. Revive national pride in this country.
Yep.
Right? Those two things, without asking anybody else for permission, that much I know I can get done. Now, there will be some legal scholars who would tell you, and the people who advise Trump and otherwise, oh, no, you can't do that. That requires congressional permission. And if you guys want to go into details, I can go into details that say, no. And this is where Trump got duped, right? They told him you can't fire federal employees because they have these so-called civil service protections, right? Special protections that say if you're a federal employee, you can't be fired. Mm-hmm. You got to read the law. It doesn't apply to mass layoffs, right? The whole point is if you work for, I don't know, the EPA.
Yeah, you can't single them out.
Yeah, I can't say because you disagree with me, but you're some environmental monitor that I can't fire you. Fine. You could disagree or not with the policy. That's what the law says. If I'm saying no, all y'all are gone because we're cleaning house and this stimulates the economy, and that's actually one of the justifications in the law. If it stimulates the economy or eliminates redundant agencies, you can shut down agencies, you can fire large numbers of people, and that's absolutely what I'm bringing to Washington, D.C. And so it does take a pretty rare combination of somebody coming in from the outside with complete disregard and disrespect for that professional political class. And I didn't realize it, but apparently that disdain came across on the debate stage last week. I didn't mean it that way, but I just do have a natural disdain for the professional managerial
I think that only
class.
helps you.
But you have to also know what you're talking about when it comes to the law, or else you're going to be duped by those same people who are your advisors that tell you all the reasons you can't do it. So then we do it, and I've also studied the current Supreme Court, which I give Trump a ton of credit for. It's one of the most valuable things he did, and it's important. They agree with me 6-3 on this. So then we go in there and get that done. By the time I'm leaving in January 2033, the Supreme Court's already said, no, this guy's right, 6-3. The next guy who takes over after me, I will relish in handing over the keys to whoever that person is, doesn't have his hands tied in the same way that my hands are tied nominally on day one. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I look at it. This is 8 years. You go in. Parts of it are going to feel like a sharp poke in the eye. I'm sure it's nice to ride around on Air Force One, but it's less of an upgrade for me than it is for many people than it was for Barack Obama.
That's
getting
right.
into that position from community organizer. That's not why I'm in this. I'm in this because I think that I didn't serve this country, actually. I think there's a lot of ways to serve a country. You don't need to apologize for being a capitalist. Yeah. But I didn't serve the country in a civic sense. I did it as a capitalist. And this is going to be my way of doing it. And I know to a lot of people that, and maybe in some measure it is just ridiculous to say, yeah, I'm going to do my national service. I'm going to do it by being U.S. president. But the honest truth is we all have to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, how am I going to use the gifts that God has given me, that God has given you, that God has given you to make your maximal contribution? And I don't think being the president's the most important job in the country. I really don't. He has an important role to play, but I'm not sure if it's more important to be a president or a pastor right now. In fact, you could make an argument that a pastor is going to fill that vacuum with something far more meaningful than a U.S. president ever can. It's not my job to be a pastor, but I will fill it with the vacuum of national identity. That's something the president can do, and that's something I'm confident I can.
I think you're hitting on a super important part. of the puzzle here. What you just said about it not being important, this is no different than us running our companies.
Yes.
Like people will say to you, oh, you're the CEO or you're the chairman or you're this. And it's such a big deal. And it's like, no, it's just a part of the requirements to do the mission.
Totally.
And president is just like that. That's how I look at it as well. I see it the same way you're seeing it. And I think that actually, if we're being honest about what's going to fix the country, it isn't going to be a president. It's going to be individuals in their communities deciding that they want to live a higher standard of life, meaning culturally, and then spreading that to their neighbors, to the left, to the right, to their sons and daughters, to their cousins. And when people lift themselves up, other people start to look at them and they say, what's he doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing, Vivek? You look great. You've been taking care of yourself. You've been working hard. I see your family. They're great. How do you do it? And then that spreads.
Totally.
And that's what we're talking about here. I feel like we have been lulled to sleep as a culture to believe that we are dependent on somebody 2,000 miles away to make the decisions for us, when in reality, the decisions they make have very little effect on our lives.
That's right.
And our community and what you're talking about, American culture, American pride, American identity, American values, these things have to come from you guys listening. They don't come from Vivek. They don't come from Trump. They don't come from anybody else. They don't come from Andy. They don't come from anybody. They come from you living it. And I agree with that statement. I think that's the best thing you said so far, honestly.
And the truth is, it's a responsibility that comes with part of the role of being the CEO. Then it's not that it's the most important position, but part of the position in a company, or part of the position in being the CEO of the executive branch and leading this country, is here's the standard I want you all to hold me to. Do you have kids, by the way?
No.
You know? Okay. You guys have
I have
kids?
two.
You have two kids? I got two sons as well.
We weren't able to have kids, so it was like, it's not that we didn't want to, it's just it didn't ever happen for us.
Okay, well,
but I have
you're young and there's a long
extreme
life ahead.
I have an extreme sense of responsibility to our younger generation.
Perfect. And you know what? Life is long, and there's many ways to
you're raising about 400 of them in here
to see how that exactly.
a few on the end of this microphone too.
Some of them look pretty. They look like they're doing fine under your tutelage here.
Their dad didn't leave.
I want you to be able to look at each of those people out there, those young people on the basketball court and in the gym. You to look at your two kids. I want to look at my two sons and tell them in good conscience that whoever that is in the White House, I want you to grow up and be like him.
Mm-hmm.
That's a high standard.
Yes.
But I think that's half the job of the next U.S. president is just lead and live your life in a way that allows young people to say, okay, I want to grow up and be like him, or a parent to want to tell their kids that same thing. It's the revival of a kind of national character that we missed.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have missed for a really long time. I think that's half the job. Half the job is getting done what the U.S. president can get done. And if we're lucky and use that momentum, that actually puts us in a stronger position to get a few laws passed too, or better yet, a few laws repealed, and then call that a day. That's 8 years' work. Keep us out of war, grow the economy, drop the mic, next guy take over.
Yeah.
That's it.
Go live your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what the presidency is. And then there's a job for everybody else to play.
Mm-hmm.
From CEO to pastor to parent to school board member. There's a job for everybody else to play too. And I do think we fall into this trap. I think the right especially does, actually. But I think all of us do in some way, is expecting that there's going to be some political messiah coming from on high to save us from the White House. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's not Andy from this show. Nope. It's not me from the White House.
Nope.
If we're going to be saved, it is going to be because we save ourselves. So I'm not letting you off the hook that easily. I'm going to do my part as the U.S. president. But it's like, back to that mentality of, well, are you going to sell me this hope and dream? And how do I know you're going to do that for me? I'm not. I'm going to do what I'm telling you I'm going to do, which is my part. But if we want to be saved, you better do your part to save yourself too. It's going to require all of us to actually, what I call a great uprising in this country, but you have to play your part too.
It's a cultural revolution.
That's the good kind.
That's what we're talking, right. We're not talking about.
Cultural counter-revolution is really what we need.
Shit. If we're being real about it, that's what we're dealing with. But that cannot be implemented by anybody else but the individual.